Hi everyone, welcome back to my sewing room. Today we are going to talk about some fabric manipulations. This came about because I did an heirloom quilt, and I'll show you that. And someone liked it, but they didn't want it so delicate, so I decided to try and create a texture quilt using different techniques for that person who saw it, and they'd like it for their little child. It's probably going to be a great quilt. I'm not going to make it too big. It's going to be great for them to lay on the floor and be able to feel all those textures and stuff that's in it. But before we get into everything that we're doing, I want everyone to do a shout out to Meredith, Amy, and Ryan. They are in the background, keeping you and I safe and having to have an enjoyable program. If you have any questions, please do type them in the chat, and Meredith, Ryan, or Amy will relay those questions to me in the meantime. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Let me show you the heirloom quilt first, because again, this is where the inspiration came from the person who saw it. And this is something that I did so many years ago. And I'm looking at it and I can see where some of the lace is starting to peel apart. It's starting to rip. Let me switch my cameras. I think you'll have a better view of seeing these textures if I go here. So I don't know if you can see those textures. Those are these are pin tucks. I also have on this quilt. I know it's kind of awkward. Also have on this quilt, these are some folded tucks. So technically you can do pin tucks by folding the fabric as well. I prefer to do the pin tucks with the pin tuck foot. So I'm going to show you some tucks and some pin tucks, and we're going to do some stuff with gathering. So this is, let me pull this away. This is a puffing strip, and all it is just some fabric that's gathered. And of course, there's lace shaping and such on it, but I'm not going to do any kind of lace shaping on the newer quilt. I want to keep it a little bit more modern. We're going to use brighter colors, and I have some of those. I do have some of those squares already done that I will share with you, and hopefully I'll have the quilt done within a reasonable time. And thank goodness it does not have to be done before Christmas. I have so much other things to do before Christmas, as I'm sure all of you do. Okay, so today I'm going to be sewing with black thread. It's going to show up best for demonstrating. I'm going to use an array of different colors of fabric, but we're just going to use some black thread today. The first one I'm going to talk to you about is a very simple one, and we're all pretty familiar with the ruffler foot. I use this, I don't use it as often as I used to because I used to make my girls dresses and things like that, and now they're in their 20s and they just don't want ruffles so much. And I don't like ruffles on my pillows and things. I'm a pretty, home deck wise, I'm pretty, let's just say it, it's flat. It's pretty flat. You see my room, it's gray and white. My whole house is gray and white. But I did have a use for it. I just costume a play not too long ago. Many of you know I'm also a costumer, and I needed an apron for a maid, and believe it or not, we didn't have any in the costume shop. So I just took 2 pieces of fabric, made a shape, and I had this already made lace or eyelet, I guess you could call it. I had that in the house already, so again, it's perfect. It's something I didn't have to go and spend money on. So I just used my ruffler and sandwiched it between 2 pieces of fabric. And then I used my wonderful quilt binder. Don't know why they call it the quilt binder, because I use it so much more than binding my quilts. But as you can see, I made a long strip of fabric, and I started it out, and then I got to a certain point and I slid the part of the apron in. So it finished off the edge for me and it gave me ties all in one shot. Easy peasy, didn't have to pay anything for that, and it was done. So the ruffler has 4 different settings on it. And the best thing to do is to pull out a strip of fabric and try each one of those out. Now, they are going to act differently on different weights of fabric. So opposed to a home deck fabric and opposed to, let's say, a cotton voile, they are going to react a little bit differently. And before you do something and you don't know how much yardage you need, cut a strip of fabric, put it through whatever setting you want. You have a 1, a 6, a 12, and a 0. So I would highly suggest just running a strip, seeing how much it shrunk, and that will help you do the math to get to how much yardage you need for your project. So let me show you these. So this one, oops, switch. This one is on setting 1, and you can see it's very tight. And what it does is it's going to gather or pleat, if you will, looks more pleated than gathered with every single stitch. So every stitch you make, it's going to push our little teeth in here. We have some teeth here on our foot, and it will push that in. This one is at setting 6, and you can see that those pleats are much further apart from each other. And this is on setting 12. And again, much larger. So you do get 3 different looks from just this one foot. Then you have your 0 setting. I very rarely use this. This is if you need to maybe just do a stitch or 2 and you don't want to remove the foot because you have more to go. To be honest with you, because there's some special things that you need to do with this foot because of those teeth, if I need to make a few stitches, I will take this off and put my regular sewing foot on. But that's your choice. Just, up to you. It's nice to have those personal preferences. Let me show you how this works really quick. And most of you probably already know. But for those of you who don't, and you'll notice that there is a special way that you need to attach this foot. You have this little claw-like thing that goes around the needle, and then it does get hooked onto your shank. And when you put the fabric in, I don't know if you can see the little teeth, but there's this black thing right here. Let me see. There's this little flange right here, and that little flange has the teeth. And that is what pushes the fabric into place before it starts to stitch. I'm just going to do a setting on the 6 setting, just because, less time. When you do a ruffle, a lot of times I will choose a fabric that is already finished, like that lace that I had, that eyelet that I had, that was a finished edge. You could also finish off the edge with either a double roll, or you can throw it through your serger with a rolled hem, or just a serged hem with decorative thread. There's also hemmer feet that you can give those a try to finish off those edges. You have all kinds of choices of how you want to finish that edge. You could even leave it raw edge and let it fray. That is completely up to you. That is the beauty of it being in your sewing room. There really is no such thing as sewing police. So it is all personal preference. Okay. So when you have this fabric, and you just saw me pull this backwards, not a good idea to pull it backwards because of those teeth. Those teeth the fabric could get stuck on those teeth, and it could bend those teeth. So when you put something in here, you just want to try and keep going forward. Alrighty, I have my machine already set up for a straight stitch center, and we are going to start sewing. And you can see, now can you see those little black teeth right there? That's what I mean by the teeth. If you pull the fabric back towards you, it will snag on those, and you really don't want to bend those. Where you sew it, again, is completely up to you. I'm just doing a practice stitch for you so that you can see how this foot acts. You do want to consider your seam allowance. You could do it straight down the center. It depends on what your finished project, what your finished strip is going to be used for. You can also do full skirts and things like that. It doesn't just have to be strips. It can be, go ahead, pleat your whole entire skirt all the way around to take up some of that fullness. So option is up to you. Okay, so that was probably the easiest and the quickest one to talk about. I'm going to switch to my vase because I need to switch off this foot. And I'm going to put my shank back on. By the way, today I am using, yes?
Before you take that off, I wanted to catch you. It was just a little bit blurry and our viewers weren't able to see it very well. So we just wanted to get that checked for you real quick. If you wouldn't mind just going over that one more time, please.
It was blurry. Okay. Do you need me to sew it again or? Okay, let's see what, I didn't see that. Check your, see, it looks different. Sorry. It looks different to me with my glasses on. How is that? Sorry. Okay. They're asking if I go through it again. Sorry about that. I wear glasses for up close. So when I look at the feed on my computer, it looked okay to me. Sorry about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rip these stitches out so we can re-ruffle. All right. Okay. That was Meredith, by the way, that voice, that magical voice you heard. That was Meredith. Okay. I'm just going to sew on the other side. All righty. Pop this in, and you can see those little teeth right there. If I pull back, it could possibly grab on those teeth right there, and it can pull those teeth back. So I have it on setting 6. Here is where you would have your settings, and you just lift it, and it's marked for you. You don't have to guess it. So there's 12, and there is 0. And I'm going to take it back to 6, just because that one's faster. And it doesn't matter where you have it on the machine. Again, it depends on your seam allowance. You do, if you need a specific seam allowance, you do want to be cautious about that by sliding it back and forth this way. You can take it straight down the middle for something decorative, completely up to you. So let's go ahead and all right, there you go. Nicely pleated. And you can see down here, these are my threads. If you made a mistake or if it's not what you wanted, it's an easy rip out. All I did was just pull on it. Just pull on it. See? And it rips out. Just be careful that you don't put holes in it. But it's an easy rip out, and then you can just pull these threads out. There you have it. That is the ruffler. Now we're going to switch back to my face so I can take this off. Alrighty. Put that back there. Let's see. The next one I think I'll talk about is my tucks. Let's talk about the folded tucks. And I will take it back to here. We're going to spend a lot of time in this mode today. So these are folded tucks. Okay. And for folded tucks, marking accurately and pinning accurately truly is the key here. And I've started this one for you. So what I did was I marked these. These are 1 inch apart. So these are going to make a ½ inch, and then they're going to be about 1 inch apart from each other. You can make that any distance that you want. You just want to make sure that you have 2 markings per fold, because what you do, and this is where the other part of accuracy comes in, is you want it to pin right on that line, and you have 2 markings. When you flip it over to the other side, you want to make sure that that pin lays right on that marking as well. Okay. And then I pinned all these for you, so that's what it will look like. I marked this with permanent marking pen so that we can see it today. Of course, you would use some kind of fabric marker. Alrighty, let's stitch some of these. And I can leave the open toe foot on. I am going to turn on my my laser. That does come in handy. If you don't have the laser on your machine, it does come on the Epic 1, the Epic 2, the 95Q, and I think that's it. If you don't have it, that is okay. You can watch your foot to be accurate about it. Like this open toe foot you see right here, it has a little red marking on it so that you can line it up. Right now, I need to move my laser back to 0. Oops, 0. And you can see that it's laying right on top of it. It is kind of nice because this gives me an opportunity that if I am swaying, I can notice it a lot sooner than if I were to keep going and pay attention to just the foot. Again, I'm just going to use a straight stitch. I am using a 2.5. 2.5 will work for this. If I am using a lighter weight fabric, I may take that down to 2.0. Reset the other one. Is this, I hope it's not blurry for you. Okay. It looks okay to me. And then we'll stitch this side. Okay, so once you have them, you want to give them a good press, and you can press them in either direction, whatever suits your fancy. It's completely up to you. Again, so many choices we have to make. When I do these, because I'm making specific size squares, when I did this, I started with the center with my marking, and then I did the other side. I went to each side so that I had a pleat going down the center of the square, and then I was able to true it up elsewhere. That is going to be important when you're doing something very specific. And of course, anytime that you manipulate your fabric in any way, maybe even pin tucks are very tiny, and I'll show you this in a little bit, opposed to these kind of tucks. These take up a lot more fabric. You really want to create your fabric first and then cut out your pattern piece, especially when it comes to garments, because this is going to take up quite a few inches. I started out with this block, started out as, I think I did 10 by 16, and I was very close to being at my 9 by 9. Now, I did have to, my top and bottom, it wasn't affected by the folds, but I did make it a little bit larger so that I have that extra wiggle room of truing it up, sizing it up, whatever. Everybody has a different phrase of that. I know it is truing it up, squaring it up, however. So do keep that in mind. of how you do that. And again, these can be any width that you want it to be. Let's say I wanted them to be narrower. I could have done my marking lines a 1/2 inch apart. I could have done them 3/4 apart. I could have done them 1 1/8 if I wanted to. That is just something that you need to play with and test them out and see what look are you going for. I do have an example here of where they were used. So if I can bring this up, my image. There you go. So here you can see that they used those tucks on the shoulder, and they used it here on the sides and again on the sleeve. So these are purely decorative. It really is because I can still see maybe there's not a dart there. There were times that you can use, let's see if I can switch back to my face. Thank you. There are times that you can use this to take a fullness and create an element at the same time. I was making some Victorian petticoats, and Victorian petticoats are notorious for having tucks in there. For me, they're a twofold. They are a decorative element, and it's usually just used on the outer petticoat. If you wore 2 petticoats in the Victorian time, the outer one would be the pretty one, and the under one is just for like comfort or fullness. But anyway, the tuck also allows me, if I need to adjust it lengthwise. So if it's too short, I can take a tuck out. If I need to make it shorter, I can add a tuck all the way around, or multiple tucks going all the way around. So I don't have to really compromise the waistband or anything like that. I can just add or release tucks, which is super nice. Okay, that is that tuck. I'm just waving it around. That is that tuck. No, today what I did was I marked these fabrics with a permanent pen so that I can see them and so that you can see them. Yes, you would want to use a fabric marking pen, and the laser just assisted me so that I can keep from veering. If you veer off that line, it is very much going to show up in your tuck. Your tuck is not going to be as perfectly straight as you would hope it would be. However, if you did that to all your tucks and you just veered, and you can create a really nice decorative element. But that's what I did today. I just used a permanent pen so that it can be seen, and laser was an assist. Okay. Let me show you these now. And I'll turn off that laser. These are additional folded tucks, and super easy to do. First, you're going to create your original tucks. Okay. And then I forgot to grab a ruler, but we'll use this as a straight line. Then you will draw your lines equidistant. A little sloppy, but you get the idea. So I drew some lines that are equidistant. And what you would do is you would pin these down in place. So even the ones that you are not going to alter, you still want to pin those in place. And then for this side, I would bring those back this way. And again, accuracy is key here. And I'm going to start this side. Again, just using a straight stitch. I'm not tying off today. If you want to tie off, you can. That, that's your comfort zone. And you know what? I think we're just doing samples today, so I don't need to tie on. As I get here, I want to make sure that these and you see how that laser helps me? Here's my marking. I was off, so if I turn that laser on, I can get to that other marking. Okay, and then if you wanted to, you could keep going down. This does get a little wonky. It just took some, let me pull back a little. It just took some time, and you can see that it does have a slight bubble here. When I add this into the quilt, it will work itself out, and it will just add just a little bit more of texture. You do want to give this a nice press before you square it up, true it up. And that will be there because we pulled these down. They're coming in a different direction. But those are super fun. And let me come back here. I have an image for that as well. Let me go to that image. Meredith, I'm having a hard time. Can you go ahead and thank you? All right. Oh, I'll go back to that. I want to find my other image. That one. Oops. There's some tucks. That's really cool. I know it's a hard background to see, but those are really cool. Those are a different kind of tucks. And they did this on the princess seam so that the princess seam was giving the shaping. So darts did not need to be involved in this bodice at all. So they were able to create this decorative elements. All right, let me go back to this one. And this is an example of what you can do with those folded tucks. And you see this is on like a denim type chambray shirt. And that section, I can guarantee you those sections were made first. And then they added those in as panels. And you can see the stitching around here where it created panels. And because this is somewhat of a princess seam as well, darts did not have to be involved in this. I want to show you this next one. This is a beautiful jacket. I was in Wisconsin this past week. So shout out to Bonnie and her crew at so-and-so in Wisconsin. So if you're ever in Wisconsin, I don't remember what area it was, around Madison, I think. Stop in, say hey to Bonnie at so-and-so. She had this jacket on, and she made this a few years ago. I don't know if you can see it, but all of those are all tucks. So she created this panel out of tucks. And down here, she did another panel of tucks going in a different direction. This was all quilter's cotton. And this here too, this is cathedral windows. So and then some yo-yos. Again, yo-yos, that is fabric manipulation. Anytime that you take a flat piece of fabric and you turn it into something three-dimensional, that is fabric manipulation. And this was the fuller size of the jacket. And for the back, she used one of the Husqvarna Viking quilting designs. I think it was thread art collection that she used. And she did continuous quilting. So she did multiple hoopings and quilted the whole entire back of the jacket and down one of the sleeves. So she was gracious enough to let me snap some pictures of that, which was really cool. This is a pillow that just has some folded tucks. Again, home deck. There's no piping, no ruffle. those pleats just speak for it all. Okay. Let's see. What should we do next? And Meredith, I'm having a hard time getting back to. Thank you. Okay. Let's go ahead and do some gathering strips. And I have a few different things to show you for that. I'm going to pop on my foot. I have a gathering foot. And if you don't have any of these feet and these feet interest you, I know 2 weeks ago, Meredith did a Facebook Live and she was showing that there was a wish list that you can download and fill out for your loved ones to get you something off of that wish list. Okay, back to the machine. This is what in the heirloom world is called a puffing strip. And what it is it's gathered fabric down both sides. And I did use this. I did do this with I'm going to turn my laser off. This is the gathering foot. There's 2 different ways that you could do the gathering foot. You can gather strips or fabric all by itself, or you can gather it onto another piece of fabric. And that is why you have this slit right here. Today, I'm not going to do that portion. We're just going to make a few different strips. And when you do this, stitch length and tension do come into play. And you have tensions on your machines, and you should be able to change your tensions. If someone tells you, oh, don't change your tensions, that could be because it's an older machine. But the machines that we have today, especially the computerized machines, those tensions are super easy to change, and they're super easy to get back to. I should have it on my face. It's super easy to get back to those tensions just by switching your stitch and or going to another stitch, and those tensions will go back to their default. So tensions do make a difference. And if you play in combination with the stitch lengths and the tensions, again, with the gathering foot, you will get a different gather, if you will. You're also going to get a different gather between a home deck fabric or a denim. I haven't, to be honest with you, I've never really tried to gather using the gathering foot with a denim. So if any of you have done that, feel free to post an image in this chat so others can see it. It's not something I've ever thought of doing. Anyway, it is going to be slightly different. You may need to get a tighter gather. You may need to change your tension on that denim opposed to what you would do for a cotton or a chiffon. It's all going to make a difference. So you do honestly want to grab whatever fabric that you're doing, and it doesn't have to be a large scrap of it, just enough for you to be able to adjust tensions and stitch length to get what you're looking for. Okay, I'm going to go back to the machine. There is a question here. So they're asking, is the puffing same as ruching? For the most part, yes. In the heirloom world, they call it a puffing strip. It is also called a ruching strip. It's the same thing. All right, let me bring this in and see if, I'm sorry, I have to adjust my camera. There you go. All right, I just chose a thinner strip. The strip I used for that block, I wanted it a little bit wider. There was some math involved because my finished needed to be 9 by 9. So I had to think about seam allowance. I had to think about where I was going to put the gathering on there so that it would fall into my seam allowance. Not a whole lot of math that was involved here, but there was some math, and I tried to make these pretty equal distance. If it didn't work out equal distance, I would have been fine with that because, if I didn't tell them that's how I wanted it to be and it didn't turn out that way, no one would know. They only know what I tell them. Right now, I am at a tension of 4.6 and I'm at a 2.5 stitch length. And let's stitch a little bit so that we can see what that's going to get us. Not a whole lot. You can see it's starting to do something, but not much. I'm going to change my stitch length and I'm going to take it to 3.5. And now you can see it's starting to give a little bit more of a gather. And I'm going to now change the tension. I'm going to take this tension, I'm going to take it up, and then I'm still at a 3.5. It's giving me a little bit more. I'm going to take that up. And this is what I mean by doing a sample. You can see the difference right as I'm changing this. So where we started out here and towards the end, here's the beginning. Here's the end. A little more gathered here towards the end because I do now have my tension at 6.4 at this point, and I am still at a 3.5 stitch length. If I were to lengthen that stitch length again, that will change it, and I am going to do that. I'm going to take my stitch length up to a 4.5. I'm going to leave my tension at 6.4, and let's see what happens on this side. And now you can see it's really giving a nice, really gave it that nice gather. Okay. When you do these puffing or ruching strips, it is best that you do the same, whatever you do on this side, do on that side. That's why we do a test sew out to find the setting that we want to do. And again, it doesn't have to be this long of a strip. I like having about 18 inches of the strip to do, only because I want to be able to change the tension and the stitch length as I'm sewing the strip, and I get to see what that looks like opposed to having a bunch of little ones. I can judge it from the beginning all the way to the end. But on a ruching strip, once you find that sweet spot, you want to take your finished strip and do it on both sides. And once you have done that, then you just give your fabric a pull like this so that you can now start to lay those pleats you want to lay them flat so that they're across from each other. And I would take this over to my ironing board and give it a steam. I will not let my iron touch it because I can flatten those beautiful pleats and gathers that it created. So I just give it a nice little steam and let it cool off. And then you can take it and sew it into your quilt block. Like that. Okay. The setting that I did was my final setting for this gather. On the one side, I had my stitch length at 4.5 and my tension was at a 6.4. Now that may not work for everybody's machine. You have to keep in mind that everyone's machine is slightly different. Even though I have an Epic 2, my neighbor can have an Epic 2 as well, and her setting may be slightly off. She might need to do maybe 6.8 to get the exact same thing. Think of them like automobiles. They may come off the same line, but they all have their little idiosyncrasies, if you will. So you can use those numbers as a jumping off point to get that type of gather, but do a test because your machine is going to be slightly different than mine. Okay. Also want to show you something else. I got a question here. The slit on the foot does what for gather? Okay, so there's a slit here. And I'm not going to do it because this is my good fabric here. If you wanted to, you can put, let me find a piece of fabric that is not gathered. That will be easier. The fabric you want gathered goes on the bottom, and the fabric that you are sewing onto goes on top. So that's what that slit is for. So if you're going to gather something as you're sewing it together, that's how you would do it. And most of the time, I don't use that option because there's math involved. I need to have a correct size strip or whatever it is that I'm going to be gathering on. I need to do some math to figure out what size do I need it to go down that seam or around that circle or something like that. For me, it's easier just to make my strip and then sew it on. Also, I do that because then I have more control with seam allowance and other things like that. But you have that option. It is not something that is difficult to do. It's just something I choose not to do. It's not my favorite way of gathering stuff. And a lot of times I am not gathering something to something else, if that makes sense. For this block here, I wanted to have total control over it because I was doing both sides and I wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to pull those out and flatten them. So that's what that slit is for. Any other questions on that? Let me go back to my screen, Meredith. If you could send me back to my images. Thank you. I have, and I think they're in the beginning. Have to go fast. Okay, this dress here. Oh, let me show you this. So this is something that you can do. It is gathered, and you'll notice that they did the gathering straight down the center. So I would not want to try and gather this as something else. I would need to use this as, I need to make my strip totally separate. If you look close, they just serged. It looks like a 4-thread overlock that they used just to finish this up. You can use a rolled hem. You can, all kinds of things that you can finish that off. And then they just circled it around. And they did this on each one. If you look, there's a panel right here on this skirt, and they added it to each panel on the skirt. I cannot wear long skirts. I'm only 5'2", and it makes me look so much shorter. This is Jackie Kennedy Onassis' dress when she married JFK. And again, if you look at it, it just has some pleats there, beautiful pleats, and that big ruffle. And if you look at her bodice here, that too is just some tucks. So they use two different techniques, and I'm almost certain this is some kind of silk. Alrighty, let's go. And I have another image of her dress, and that is another view. So I don't remember what museum this is in, but it is in one of the museums. So if you want to see it live, I can do a search and put it in the post later and let you know what museum it's at. And this is Jackie Kennedy in the dress. Very beautiful. And I think she was married in 1953. Do not quote me on that. Okay. If you could, Meredith, can we come back to my... Thank you. All right. I have another thing I want to show you with the gathering. So I made this cute little flower. And this is just gathered fabric. I did take it to the serger. I now have the Amber Air S600. And this is just a rolled hem on the edge of it. And I did one side of it. You could also, and I did a strip here. This was a strip that was folded in half, so that's how I took care of my raw edge. Again, the gather is going to gather differently if your fabric is two-fold, opposed to just being a single fabric. So you want to keep that in mind. If that's how you want to finish your edges and you want it same fabric on both sides, you will need to take that into consideration when you go to gather up your fabric. So I have another strip here, and I pieced it together, and I made some major changes to the settings when I did this because I wanted it super tight. I also adjusted where my needle is going to be. So I want to move my needle. Oops, wrong way. I wanted to use the edge of the foot to guide up with the edge of my fabric. So opposed to moving the fabric, I'm moving my needle. I did not want it to take up a lot of my seam allowance here. So I did move this over. I also adjusted on this one. I made my stitch length 3.5 and I took my tension all the way up to, I'm getting there. It goes all the way up to 9.8, but I think I was at 9.4 when I did it. Just a straight stitch. And you can see, I'm getting off. I'm off a little. You can see how much it's already beginning to gather. And that's just by changing. That was mainly changing the tension. Well, this is longer than what I thought it was going to be. All right, I'm going to stop there. You get the idea. Let me cut this off. And then all I did was I folded this down so it created like a triangle. And then I just started to wrap this on itself. Let's see if I can pull my camera away a little so you can see this. I just kept wrapping and wrapping. And again, I could have done that whole entire strip and it would have made that very much fuller. And then for that last piece, I have a little hole back there and I just pulled it through. And what I will do next, and you can play with this, what I will do next is not for the faint of heart because it is a little messy, but that's okay. I'm going to grab my, I'm just going to grab my open toe foot because that's the foot I can find at this moment. Take it back to a basic stitch. I'm taking it back to a basic straight stitch. And all I did was, and we have an extra lift here on this machine so I can get this under. And it wants me to integrate my IDF. And all I did was some simple straight stitches in the back. The less I have to glue, the better. I'm not always a fan of glue. You could have glued this onto a round piece of fabric. Your choice. I would prefer not to. And you can see where I'm going with that. I hope you can see it. And I'm just going to do one more. I am someone who does a lot of things organically. Okay, so there you have it. Clip those threads out. And if I were not on camera, I probably would have futzed with the flower a little bit more. And then you can just put a yo-yo, a brooch would be pretty in there. You could put a button in there, anything that suits your fancy. Here hand tacked a button. It has a shank on it, so I did just do some little hand tacking. So now this is, you see the difference between the two? I would have flexed more. So that is something very simple. And again, that is just some basic fabric manipulations. I don't know if I'm going to include that on the quilt or not, because it does have that button. And if it's an infant, you know, you got to think about that. Maybe if I were to put those on the quilt, I will make a yo-yo and hand tack that yo-yo on. Another reason why I don't want to use glue, because if this is going to be for an infant or a child, and it's going to be something that they're playing with or handling quite a bit, I don't know if I want the glue on that either. Okay, any questions on that? Perfect. All right, let's do some more. I have more. Let's see. Let's just get that out of the way. Alrighty. We're going to do some pin tucks. Pin tucks can be really fun. And again, they do not have to be for heirloom. You can have all kinds of fun with pin tucks, such as this block right here that I did. This was just, again, I told you, I like doing things organically, and all I did was come from the sides and down and just, I just did whatever. Because, again, these are going to be specific size squares, I did cut my fabric a little bit larger, so I have the opportunity to size it down to the size that I need for the finished quilt. And I am just using a pattern from 3-yard quilts. I'm sure you're, ladies who quilt, I'm sure you're familiar with those booklets where each quilt in there only calls for 3 yards of fabric for the top alone. And I'm using a very simple pattern from that, and it has 9 different blocks on it. So instead of using 3 solid fabrics or just three fabrics, I chose 2 fabrics to be the base of my of the quilt. And then where I'm supposed to use the 3rd color of fabric, I'm supposed to cut 9 squares or 12 squares out of that one. Instead, I'm doing some figuring out, and I'm cutting them in primary color fabrics opposed to that. You can be creative and use a pattern as your jumping off point. You don't have to create something from scratch. I mean, this pattern, this quilt is going to be pretty much my design, but I use that pattern as a jumping off point, and it is okay to do that. And you can make changes to it. That's what patterns are for. They're templates. They're not the end all be all. Okay, so I have this one, and I also did this one. So this one, I wish you can be here so you can feel those. Those are actually raised because I put some cording below it just to give it a little more height, a little more texture. And then between it, I sewed a decorative stitch. This is a cat because I don't know if you noticed, some of the base fabric is paw prints. And we all know how much I love cats, but luckily this person loves cats too. And I thought about it. So not knowing which way I was going to put the square, I alternated how I stitched out those decorative stitches. So let's go ahead and let's do that. I do need to pop in a twin needle, and I'm going to switch here. There are different sizes of pin tucking feet. You have a 3, 5, 7, and 9. I am going to use a 5 because I'm using a medium weight fabric, and that is the one that's here in this bag. I'm going to take that out in a moment. So depending on the weight of your fabric has to do with which foot you're going to use. If you're using a heavier weight fabric, you would go with the 3. If you have a lightweight fabric, you can use the 5, or excuse me, the 7 and the 9. Again, it depends on what weight your fabric is. And if you're not sure, you would want to do a little stitch out and see what's going to work best. There are also different size twin needles. So this one is an 80, but it's a 4.0. And what that 4.0 is referring to is, let me pop this out. It is referring to, I am not having luck with that. Come on. It refers to the space that is between the two needles. So the one I'm going to use is here in this bag. And this one is a 2.0. So you can see the differences between this and this. If you're not sure what needle to use, I believe you get an instruction guide that comes with your foot, and in there it should tell you what twin needle to use. Or you can take your twin needle and lay it inside the groove. And if that fits, then you know it works. Okay, I need to take this out and pop my other one in. And I have noticed that at Joann Fabrics, they are not carrying very many twin needles. They do have twin needles that I would use to sew if I were rehemming some jeans or something like that. If you notice on the bottom of your jeans, you have that two rows of stitching. There is a twin needle for that, and it is a denim size. Downfall of using a twin needle is you do need to thread your needles yourself. You cannot use your automatic needle threader. On the top of your machine, and I'm going to try and do this without changing the focus, and I'll move slow as to not make anybody sick. Right here on this machine, it has a flange, a fin, if you will. When you're using twin needles, it is best to take one on one side and then take your other thread on the other side. What that is going to help do is to keep your threads from being tangled. And I lost you. Your threads are going to intertwine and they may tangle, and that's okay. But threading the machine properly in that manner is going to help from it becoming really entangled in each other. So let me get this one threaded. And this is loose. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know how it came loose, but I got to get my machine up. Oh, what am I doing? I just said you can't do that. See, force a habit. That is a habit. Alrighty. And pop my foot on. Bring my threads. These feet also come with this little guide. You can use this with heavier fabrics to help lift the fabric a little bit, so you can get a more defined pin tuck. So if you were doing something on a heavier fabric, you do want to do that. Put this on and it snaps right on, right in front of your foot here, just like that. We're also going to use this later. We're going to put some cord through it. I have noticed that on the machine that I am using today, I do not need to adjust my tensions to get a good pin tuck. For some machines, you may need to adjust the tensions. It really does just depend. I'm going to go ahead and leave that there for now. It's not going to harm me in any way. And I don't know if you can see this, but I did a fold. I just fold it down the center. And I like having the opportunity to just fold because that's less marking I have to do on my fabric. So I will turn my laser back on and that will follow the fold. And oh darn, I didn't have my foot on. Oh, look at that. All right, new needle. I didn't have my foot on all the way. Did it break in there? Okay, bring this up. And it's stuck in there. Oh no. Wouldn't you know it? Let's see if I can grab it. There we go. Okay. This one's a little wider. And you know what? I'm going to take it out and just double check that it can be used. Yes, this one can be used. Now we need to rethread. Always when we're on camera, right? It just goes to show that us educators are human too. There's also a safety feature on this machine that I can turn on. I'm just double checking everything. Okay. There's a safety feature that you can turn on this machine that you can let the machine know that you're doing a twin needle so that if, I'm like so totally amazed by how that bent. So if you were using the twin needle, it will put a message box up there saying that you're on a stitch that will not accommodate a twin needle. I like my pop-ups. I don't turn my pop-ups off because they tell me something. All right. So again, I'm having issues here. Sorry about this. Let's see. I'm probably going to need to rethread. So I'm going to put it on my face so you don't have to see me go through all of this. If you have any questions, let me know. And I just need to pop off my base, and I've got some threads in there. I will rethread. And I would say let's just move on, but either way it goes today, I'm going to need to rethread this machine. All right, I am going to take my top threads out. I got all that cleaned up. Okay, throw that away. Hey, you got to see the, oh, you don't see it. Good. You don't need to see the underbelly of my machine. All right. Maybe you wanted to see this. I don't know. All right. Throw my bobbin. All right. Again, us educators, we're human. Sometimes we have bad times in our sewing room. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. And of course, I automatically went to my automatic needle threader. I will be honest, normally when I change my top thread, if it says that I have an issue with my top thread, I do automatically do the bobbin. It only takes a second or two to rethread that bobbin as well. And your bobbin is affected by your top thread. So if there's an issue on the top, that's when your bobbin is going to act up. Almost there. And if you hold your tongue a certain way, everything threads easier. can't seem to get that one thread onto that tension disc above my needle. Oh, come on. It's because I'm on camera, of course, right? Alrighty, I'm rethreaded. And before I switch back to the machine, I'm going to do a little test stitch. I had a pretty nasty bird's nest there. Okay. I'm just going to do a test sew out before. Yeah. Something still isn't working right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it might be something that I need to do a little more extensive work on. So I think so as not to waste your time and have you watch me try and stitch my whole entire machine. Let me just go through what I have left. No harm, no foul. It happens. Okay. I have some questions here. Do you have a picture of the 3-yard quilt? I don't have it on me. I do have it put away, but I could maybe pop it into the chat later on today in this Facebook Live, if that helps. And let's see. Oh, we are past time. So before we finish up, I do want to show you a few other things really quick. And I'll just show it to you because I was having fun with this. So I also created this. This is fabric manipulation. And how I did this flower was 2 steps I did. If you don't mind hanging out with me for just a few moments. I actually used my circle attachment. So you know our circle attachment, it just pops onto the machine. Super easy to use. And what I did was I laid 2 pieces of fabric, and I already turned this one out. I laid 2 pieces of fabric right sides together. Right sides together. And I did use a piece of stabilizer. You want to use that stabilizer. So as I went around the circle, I left a small opening. So I didn't sew the whole entire, I didn't create a whole entire circle. I stopped and did a tie off so that I was able to have this little slit here so that I could turn it out. Once I turned it out, I pressed it really well. And then there's a few different ways that you can change the shape. I was just doing a quickie little fold in, kind of like that. You could also do a dart. So if you're familiar with darts, start wider here and move up into here. And I will pin that so that you can see what a dart would look like. And it is a diagonal stitch. So I'll just pin that. So then you could get an idea of what, I think I'm done with the machine. So I'm gonna move this out of my way. So you have an idea of what a dart would look like. I made 5 of those and arranged them onto my block. And then for the center, you can see that has textured fabric in it. That too is a fabric manipulation because I took it from a flat fabric to a 3-dimensional. So this was the piece that I had left. I stitched it out, and you can see I stitched it out. And what I used here for my stabilizer, that is Shrinky Stabilizer. This design and a few others are up on the My Sew Net library right now. There's different designs, so they're going to give you a different texture when you go to shrink them. It will shrink 30%. So keep that in mind. If you need a specific size, you want to think about that. These are what are called smocking designs. So if you search the word smocking on My Sew Net library, you will find those designs. And because they are smocking designs, they also have, and you're not going to be able to see it too much here, but right here in the corners, they are little tacking marks so that you can do multiple hoopings, so that it doesn't have to just be that size. You can do continuous hooping to fill up a large area. And that's what I did there. You can also do the same kind of thing, free motion. You can just do some straight line quilting. However you want to create that, you can create your fabric that way. And I also have what's called heat activated thread. And if you look at these samples, so this is just sewn. I don't know if you can see it. I hope you can. And then I used the white thread that you see. That is the heat activated, the shrink thread. So if you want it to be very specific of where you want this done, that is possible. So that you don't have to do a whole entire fabric. You can do it just in sections of something. I put this in the top. However, I would suggest that you put it in your bobbin. That way you can have your top thread matching your fabric. I was just playing with it and just didn't feel like winding a bobbin, to be honest. So I did put it through my needle just to see how it would work. And Meredith, if you could switch to my images real quick, I just want to show them one more image. Thank you. There's some more fabric manipulations there. We have tucks and pin tucks. That is a fabric manipulation. And this one you saw, that one you saw. That. I think it's the last image. Oh, here, something fun that was done with those flowers. This is a memo board. And they put, so they can write in on the back of it. And then they just took a scallop here. Again, this was a sample at Bonnie's shop at So-and-so's. I had to take a picture of that one as well. On this pillow, if you look close to this pillow, so right here, you have some very specific places. It wasn't an all over piece that was shrunk. It was just some very specific places. That way you can create a different kind of texture opposed to these, which were done in the hoop with the shrink using those smocking embroideries. So you can really have a lot of freedom when you're doing that. Okay, Meredith, if you could put it back to my face, if that's okay. Alrighty, I am so sorry about my machine malfunctions. I guess I'm going to have to take it apart, and I might have something stuck in the thread guide up there and stuff, so I have to take it apart. And I'm so sorry that we didn't get to see all that. But I will tell you that next SewNet let's start over. Next, my SewNet Facebook Live is January 11th. Oh, and it's with me. Yay. I'm going to be working on Sketch. I love that program. It's a lot of fun. So we're going to do some information on Sketch. And then the next Husqvarna Viking Facebook Live is January 4th. And that's with Kathy Fromm. And she's going to be doing some quilting and creating memories. So I would go ahead and I would make sure that you I think you have to like our page so that you can get information, so that you can get notifications of when we are going to have our Facebook Lives. So again, I apologize for my malfunctions, and I thank you so much for spending your hour with me. Thank you all, and have a really great holiday. Bye.